From news and views, issues and opportunities, we'll have in-depth conversations with decision makers to find out what they know and what they think. I'm Rico Hizon, inviting you to join the exchange because your business is our business. Nearly 12 trillion pesos. That's how much the country owes, and it is our biggest debt on record.
Problem is, wala na tayong pera.
The national debt ballooned to historical levels as the government grapples to boost our war chest in this extended pandemic. To aid our struggling kababayans, purchase vaccines, tide over the battered healthcare system, and stimulate the economy. As the continuing health crisis holds back our recovery amid this mounting debt, how worried should we be? Breaking down the numbers to understand what the national debt means to you and me, and a look at the borrowing behavior of Filipinos tightening their belts amid this uncertainty, fostering trust and financial literacy in our C-Suite vision. Countries piled on record amounts of debt for a crisis like no other, including ours. Just how much do we owe? A staggering 11.92 trillion pesos as of end September, according to the Treasury Bureau. Our debt levels have also soared to more than half of our economy, the highest in 16 years. One presidential aspirant even pointed out, every Filipino now owes 120,000 pesos. To whom do we owe such a huge amount, and what needs to be done to pay them off? Let's now have an exchange with RCBC's chief economist, Mike Ricafort. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Some sectors are already sounding the alarm. Let's discuss this in simple terms. What does this mountain of debt mean to ordinary Filipinos, their jobs, and their day-to-day life?
Hi, Rico. Thank you so much for having me and your viewers. It's really relative to how we see it. One better way to look at the country's national debt is the fact that it's similar to an investment in the sense that the government spends for infrastructure, education, healthcare primarily. Those are the top budget items, and that would really go a long way. It's really how the country uses it. That's really most important.
So are we using this money properly?
Well, supposedly, Rico, in the sense that number one in the budget item is education. So that would really lead to long-term productivity gains for the economy, for our future generation. And secondly, infrastructure. And it also, in terms of better roads, bridges, ports, airports, to better improve the productivity of the population, the movement of people, tourists, goods.
But the big question is, Mike, is this borrowed money getting into the proper projects? Because over the past years, we always talk about corruption, which is endemic in our government. So is there a monitoring system to find out if we are using this debt the right way?
Well, Rico, that has been for many decades. That has been the issue in terms of governance, corruption, leakages, wastage. But so far, at least in recent years, we have seen already improvement in the country's credit ratings. First investment grade since 2013, further upgrades thereafter. We're now 1 to 3 notches above the minimum investment grade. That's a record for the Philippines. So it goes to show, because of the tax reform measures that were implemented, the anti-corruption measures, good governance, preventing unnecessary expenses. So that has improved the country's fiscal performance. So,
but nevertheless, Mike, with this huge amount of debt, our kababayans are still worried, no? 12 trillion pesos, 110 to 120,000 pesos each for every Filipino, maybe who is just still born. Let's listen to their sentiments, what our kababayans are saying.
Bakit nagkakaunta ang gobyerno, sir, ng malaki-laki? Kung baga hindi naman nagagamit po sa dapat na pwedeng paggamitan po.
Na sana yung inutang ng gobyerno, sana napunta sa mabuti. Hindi yung napunta sa bulsa ng ibang tao.
Ayan, pupunta daw sa bulsa ng ibang tao, tapos 12 trillion pesos pa. How many zeros is that? Mike, 12. Baon na talaga tayo sa utang. Can we pay this off?
Well, it's an issue of sustainability and being at manageable levels. So, how is that defined? Actually, those concerns are valid. There are international metrics and standards. For instance, in a given year, the budget deficit of a country under normal circumstances should be around 3% of GDP. And the debt to GDP ratio, the percentage of the country's debt to the country's economy should be around 60%. That's the international threshold. As long as those metrics are sustained, so that could be sustainable over the long term. Because as far as we can remember, the country always incurs debt to really make sure that we all benefit over the long term. You have more people becoming more productive, and at the same time, the economy is functioning well. It's providing a very conducive environment for business, for the overall economic activities of the country. So it's like,
But Mike, our economy is struggling right now. No, can we really repay this debt? What does the government need to do?
Yeah, that's very important, Rico, because now, going forward, because the pandemic has really, it reduced business activities, it reduced tax collections, and it bloated the expenditures of the government. Like the ayuda, for instance, 200 billion just for last year, and the various COVID programs. So that's why our budget deficit widened, and our debt stock also went up.
But But Mike, what if we fail to pay this debt, the interest payments? What will happen? What are the repercussions?
Well, that's why it's very important to have these sustainable levels, like the 60% of GDP. That's still within the international standards. So, of course, that's very important for many years and decades, always honoring the payments of both interest and principal. So, because that would ensure the country's fiscal performance, so creditors and lenders would continue to lend to us at relatively lower interest rates.
But
and
is there a possibility if we continue to borrow, and our mountain of debt continues to bloat, can we afford to pay back our creditors? Could there potentially be a debt moratorium?
Well, that should, at least the 60% debt to GDP, that would ensure that for many years to come, the country would be able to sustain and pay the debts.
Thank you so much for this debt exchange. RCBC economist Mike Ricafort. And now here's a rundown of this week's top business stories. Fitch Solutions raises its growth outlook for the country this year to 4.5% from 4.2% as COVID-19 cases drop and economic activity begins to normalize. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas says foreign direct investments posted growth in August, up by nearly 20% at $812 million compared to last year. And farm output in January to September declined by a hefty 2.5%, the lowest in 11 years, as livestock and poultry production issues hound overall agricultural performance. And straight ahead on The Exchange, where your business is our business, we'll check the country's billing with one of our biggest lenders. How can we make debt more productive so every one of our kababayans benefits? And this Squid Squad is making sure you are following health protocols in malls. This is CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. The country's economic growth lost momentum in the third quarter as the reimposition of lockdowns during the period hurt consumption. Output slowed to 7.1% from July to September, and that is when the daily coronavirus cases hit record highs. The figure was lower than the 12% growth registered in the April to June period. President Duterte's Chief Economic Minister Carl Chua says the more relaxed restrictions this October to December will help the government reach its 4 to 5% growth target.
No, I think we are not going to raise the target. You either hit it or exceed it. And we are hoping that we will at least hit the upper end of the 4 to 5%, or even do better because of the lowering of the alert level in the fourth quarter. And we would like everyone to cooperate, help each other, follow the minimum health standard so that we will not have a reversal.
For London-based Capital Economics, a stronger than expected growth in the second half does not mean we are off the hook, because the recovery will still have a long way to go and the economy will remain in catch-up mode throughout 2022. Our national debt has soared to levels we've never seen before. The government is borrowing billions of dollars from international lenders to fund this ongoing pandemic response. And one of them is the Asian Development Bank. Let's now have an exchange with ADB's country director, Kelly Bird. Mr. Bird, thank you so much for joining us on the exchange. How much has the Philippines borrowed from the Asian Development Bank in recent years, especially during this Duterte administration?
Well, in the last 3 years, ADB has increased its lending program with the Philippines. In 2019, we lent $2.5 billion. In 2020, it was 4.2, of which $1.8 billion was in response to the COVID pandemic. And this year, we're looking around $2.2 billion. And this lending fits in with our country partnership strategy that was approved back in 2018. And it's really anchored in supporting the government's infrastructure investments programs, promoting local economic development, and investing in Filipinos through education, health, employment programs, and social assistance.
This so-called utang, which is a word for borrowed in Filipino, is around $10 billion, Mr. Bird. Our kababayans want to know, what are the terms of payments and interest on these loans?
On the ADB loans, well, ADB is a very transparent institution. We have all this information on our website, so it's easily accessible. The ADB's loans are highly concessional, and that includes very low interest rates. And it also has a long tenure. So these, depending on the particular modality, but tenure in terms of repayment schedules can range anywhere between 15 years and 32 years. Currently, interest rates are determined by LIBOR plus a basis points. But generally, these interest rates have been at 1% or below.
Mr.
So
Bird,
they are highly concessional.
yes. Let's listen now to some Filipinos and their feelings about the borrowed money from international lenders, Mr. Bird.
Hindi ako magbabayad niyan. Siyempre gusto natin malaman kung saan nagamit kasi pera ng taong bayan yun eh.
Mahirap na nga tayo, may utang pa.
Mr. Bird, many Filipinos want to find out, does the Asian Development Bank monitor how the money is used by the Philippine government?
Well, we have ADB has a very strong, robust financial management system and procurement system. And all ADB loans to the Philippines or any other member country is subject to ADB procurement rules and guidelines. And if it's, for example, in infrastructure projects, everything is fully monitored. And in many cases, the government will ask ADB to make direct payments, for example, to contractors.
But Mr. Bird,
a very robust system in place.
A robust system in place indeed. But Mr. Bird, do you think that the government is using these loans, which is close to $10 billion, productively, so every Filipino benefits from it?
Absolutely. You know, a big portion of our lending in the last 3 years has gone to infrastructure. And these infrastructure projects are helping to, a lot of it's in public transportation, like the Malolos Clark Railway project or our Edsa Greenways pedestrian walkway projects. These are all designed to lift long-term growth. They're all designed to create jobs, but also help to climate. They're also designed for climate mitigation and adaptation. So they have huge positive benefits to the Philippines. And when projects and ODA lending is approved, it has to go through a very rigorous internal process within ADB, but also government. And they do have to reach certain thresholds when it comes to economic returns, financial returns, environmental safeguards, and so on.
But Mr. Bird, many of the Filipinos are saying that the government has borrowed a lot of money. As of the end of September, it's close to 12 trillion pesos, and that means every Filipino owes lenders 110,000 pesos each. And they're asking, why are we still so poor despite all this borrowed money?
Okay, so when you look at that 11.9 trillion pesos, so it sounds like a lot, but what we have to do is, we've got to consider 3 points when we're interpreting those numbers. First of all, we need to compare that debt level with national income. And national income is a measure of affordability of that debt. And so typically the metric is national debt to GDP. Back in 2019, that was around 40% of GDP. Went up to about 54% last year, and it's hovering around 60% of GDP now. Now, at this level, it's fiscally sustainable over the medium term. And in fact, Philippines' debt level is in about the mid-range of other countries that have the BBB plus sovereign credit rating, and that's what you need to measure it against. So kind of the bottom line is it's very sustainable, and it's mid-range to other countries that have similar credit ratings. And remember, Philippines' credit rating of BBB plus is investment grade, and it's only one notch below AAA minus. So it is a sound fiscal framework that they have.
Thank you so much for this lending exchange, Kelly Bird from the Asian Development Bank. And now in other business news making headlines, Twitter is bringing ad-free services to the US for about $3 a month. Twitter Blue also allows users to undo tweets, read threads more easily, and customize their navigation. The paid service is also launching in New Zealand. No word yet when it's coming to the Philippines. Have you ever wondered how the first Apple computers looked like? Well, we're showing you right now the Apple I. And this fetched for nearly $500,000 in a recent auction. It is one of a few surviving computers from the tech giant's first ever model. Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs created the computer in Jobs' family garage between 1976 and 1977. And one company is unveiling a Martian-grown ketchup. Heinz made Mars Edition with tomatoes produced on Earth, but in Mars-like conditions. A team of 14 astrobiologists worked on it for 9 months. But the Martian ketchup will not be available for purchase. And straight ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business. Are Filipinos borrowing more money during this pandemic? We'll find out from one of the country's biggest banks. And we'll take you to a mall that's guarded by this squad from a popular K-drama. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. It's great that you're staying with us right here on the exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. The Philippines aims to be among the first countries to benefit from a trade deal next year to jumpstart economic recovery. In my interview on The Final Word, lead negotiator and Trade Assistant Secretary Alan Hepty said the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is crucial for the Philippines and we can greatly benefit from this free trade arrangement.
The benefits of the RCEP agreement will come into place once the Philippines becomes a party to the agreement. So right now, Philippines is still a signatory. We're still in the process of seeking the concurrence of the Senate. The President has already ratified the same, so we hope that the Senate can act on it immediately so that by the time that RCEP comes into force on January 1, 2022, Philippines is already a party.
Well, according to Hepty, the RCEP arrangement could generate more than 1 million jobs for Filipinos until 2030, particularly in the services sector, electronics, machinery, agriculture, and food production industries. Throughout this program, we scrutinize our country's debt and what it means to you and to me. Now we bring the discussion on a micro level and check on the borrowing behavior of our kababayans during this pandemic. Let's now have an exchange with Dante Tinga Jr. of BDO. Thank you so much for joining us, Dante. Generally, are our kababayans borrowing from banks?
Thank you, Rico, for having me on the show. Well, of course, in the current environment, loan demand in general, whether from companies or individuals, is relatively subdued. And that's understandable because during times of economic uncertainties, you hold back on borrowing, investing, in general consumer activities.
And for our kababayans who want to borrow money, as individuals, what will it take to them? What will it take for them to borrow or make a loan from a bank?
Okay. Generally, there are just two requirements. One is a proof of ID. The other would be proof of ability to pay. So that could come in the form of your employment history and your income levels, right? So those are, and it depends what kind of loan you're trying to apply for. But those are the two general types of requirements.
You know what, Dante, if you take a look at the numbers, at least 50 million Filipinos are unbanked. That's around 70% of the total adult population. Lack of enough money remains a topmost reason for not having an account. Is this a concerning statistic for banks like BDO?
It's both a concern and also an opportunity, right? The reason for the significant number of unbanked population in the Philippines is not just because of the low levels of income. There are also lack of financial literacy. Individuals are not familiar with the benefits of savings or keeping their money in banks. There are also, I suppose, lack of access, particularly in the remote areas, right? There are not enough branches. And there are, again, the requirements that individuals need to have to open bank accounts, proof of ID, etc. But these, we think, are all issues that can be addressed or in the process of being addressed. So you do have a significant amount of, a number of unbanked population in the Philippines, but we see that as an opportunity rather than just a risk, especially as the issues are related to things other than low income levels.
Yeah, because for them to come up with these requirements, they have to think. It might be a headache for many of our Filipinos. That's why they don't want to think anymore to borrow money. That's why they just go to pawn shops or loan sharks to borrow money, because borrowing from banks means, all of these requirements that have to be submitted.
Yes. But hopefully there's the Philippine government's plan to have a national ID system, right? And then also the banks, including ours, are opening branches in remote or underserved areas of the country and also using technology, right, to access these underserved areas. So hopefully we cast a wider net, we make it easier for individuals to open accounts, And also the plans to improve financial literacy will also help individuals understand the importance and the benefits of opening bank accounts.
So, I mean, just for the education and information of our kababayans watching us right now, in terms of interest rate, is it better for them to go to a pawn shop or a loan shark, or is it are they better off with borrowing from a bank?
You're better off borrowing from a bank because of the bank interest rates are generally market determined, right? Whereas that may not be the case from the, I guess, the more informal borrowing sources. Of course, there are these requirements, minimum levels of deposits that you would need to satisfy to open a bank account and borrow. But again, these requirements are being reviewed, adjusted, depending on the different markets the bank serves.
Thank you so much for this bank borrowing exchange, Dante Tinga Jr. of BDO. And as the holiday shopping season begins, who better to remind people of health protocols in malls than the guards from Squid Game? A so-called Squid Squad stormed SM Mall Legazpi, clad in hooded jumpsuits from the Netflix K-drama. Management hopes this would attract more visitors. The Squiddy Santas carried signs on social distancing and wore Santa hats to greet mall goers. And this is the exchange. We make sense of the facts and the figures and the ups and downs of the business cycle, because your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust.